All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to another Shamans Directory live event. And I'm Mayumi Beckers from the Netherlands. And today I'm your host, and I'm one of the members of Shamans Directory. And today we have a special speaker, Zahra Indigo Rønlov from the US. And we are really happy and privileged to have her here today. And before we start with our talk today, I just want to tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we are about. Shamans Directory is a new international online platform for shamanic services created by a global group of shamanic practitioners from around the world. And the intent of Shamans Directory is to celebrate shamanism from all corners of the world, and also to provide a platform, a channel where healers can book healers are connected with clients, and so they can book an appointment, and also offer this channel where students can connect with teachers so they can deepen their medicine and practice. And we have just launched, and our registration is open since last month, and we welcome new memberships to come in. And we are hoping to populate the directory to about 100 plus members, so we can open it up further to the clients and activate our search function on the website. And so for those who are interested and want to expand their services and becoming part of our global community, I invite you to go to www.shamansdirectory.com and register there and learn a little bit more about our platform and what we can offer to you. And also what I'd like to tell a little bit on our About page. We have a beautiful list of ambassadors who are supporting our One Fire, One Medicine vision, and also helping us to gather a group of healers as well, and create this authenticity of all of our members as well, and have a warm invitation to join us as well. So we're really happy to have all of these growing group of ambassadors on board, and one of our ambassadors is also our guest speaker of today, Zahra Indigo Rønlov, and I'm happy to introduce her to you all. And let me just read a little bit about her intro, her bio, before we start our talk today. So Zahra Indigo, she received her master's degree in eco-psychology from Europa University, and she's a healing alchemist and a priestess of Ma'at. As such, she's dedicated to serving truth in every way she's able to perceive it, while helping others walk their path of truth and healing. Zahra Indigo is a sacred witness to the unfolding complexity, beauty, and mystery of this existence. It is her intention to live life in service to the health of our planet and all who reside here, and in this she has discovered something quite profound and rewarding. So before we start, I just want to say that we have plenty of time and room for questions. So I welcome you to put them in the chat if anything comes up, so we can kind of create like this lively and interactive session. And for those who are not maybe familiar with Zoom, there's a chat button below the screen. And if you want to look into the view options, you can go to the right top corner and adjust the viewing, whether it's the gallery or a speaker view. So just the technicalities of that. So now I would love to welcome Zara to this live event. And Zara has also prepared us like a beautiful opening prayer to open this sacred space together, and a heart breath meditation. So I welcome Zara to, open up this space for her.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to both of you and everyone here who's chiming in from wherever you are on this precious planet that we all are a part of. And thank you to Shamans Directory for the beautiful work that you're doing in the world to help connect us all. So beginning with gratitude, that's our foundation. And I invite us all to just take a deep breath, right? This breath, this sacred breath that we all share. Whether you're here in the Pacific Northwest of America, where I am, or in India, or in whatever place you are on this planet, we are all sharing the same breath. And we're sharing the same breath with not only the humankind, but all of the web of life, the four-legged ones and the flying ones, the slithering ones, the rooted ones. All of life shares this sacred breath. So just take a moment and feel the beauty of this breath that we breathe from the moment we arrive here on Earth to the moment we leave. And I want to offer a prayer to Creator, and however Creator is for you, in whatever way Creator shows itself to you or speaks to you. I call to Creator, the Creator of all of us. And I call to Creator with gratitude. I call to Creator with hope. I call to Creator to help us arrive into this present moment, to arrive into the truth of our hearts, to arrive into our choices so that we may choose time and time again that which serves all of our highest goods. I call to Creator to help me remember where I came from, and to remember where I'm headed. As this small human that I am on the planet, one speck of light amongst billions of beings of light. I just root in gratitude. And this is my simple and small prayer for myself, for each of you, as we come together today. Thank you. Thank you, Creator. And so it is.
Thank you so much for this beautiful prayer. Yeah, it's very nice to come into that and start a conversation. I'm just also very curious a little bit where this sort of prayer comes from, or, before we talk a little bit about your path, could you maybe tell us something about that?
My heart. It comes from my heart. I'm a minister, a walking prayer, and I became a minister with the Center for Sacred Studies. And what that path has become for me is that every moment is a prayer, every breath is a prayer, right? Every heartbeat is a prayer. And it's about arriving into this moment and just listening to whatever truth needs to come through. And what needs to be spoken, and for me, Creator is gosh, it's hard to even put it into words, but it's the grand essence that animates us, that provides for us, that makes existence even possible. And so I don't specifically have a name, though I see creator in a myriad of ways, as the bird flying across the sky, as the child playing in the field, as the leaves rustling in the trees. This is all part of creator. The planets rotating around the sun, the galaxies, the sum total of this universe and whatever is beyond it, right? That's all creator to me. And so just opening the prayer to arrive into that truth, that I am this little tiny speck of being, of light, of dust in the grand play of creation. So that's where it comes from. My path is a culmination of all that I've learned throughout my life, and my prayer to creator, with creator, for creator, just comes from that place.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. So, Shinsui, you're touching a little bit about your path and also your ministry of prayer. Could you tell us a little bit about, yeah, your whole journey of becoming a healer and where you're right now?
Right. Well, so I'll date myself. I'm 50, right? So I've been on this planet for 50 turns around our sun. And I can remember back when I was a small girl and I didn't have words for any of this. I didn't have a family context that provided the words or the understanding for what I know today. But I have this very distinct memory of the circle, right? Just the simple symbol of the circle. And that somehow in that circle, there was something really important and profound in that circle, that we are all connected, right? That the circle wasn't a pyramid, though I like pyramids, I am a lot, but that it's about a wholeness. And then as I grew, I recognized that that circle is actually a spiral of becoming. And so that spiral of becoming has been my path, right? So there's a lot of coming around, and then I'm back at where I started, but I'm just a little bit more elevated. I know a little more. I understand a little more. I also don't understand more. The more I knew, the more I know I don't know, right? The more my exposure to the world of healing has come to me, the more I realize that I will never know, right? The more I realize I will never know. So that's kind of where it started. And then I'd say that it wasn't until my late 30s when I began to really wake up to something more than just, working the job, living the life, taking care of the kids, doing the thing. I began to recognize that there was something far more profound going on beyond the material, beyond what I could see and touch and feel and taste and hear with my senses. And so I began to explore. I began to look for what this was, how this was related to myself. And so I went into a training program to be a teacher in a system called Waldorf education. Rudolf Steiner is a man who comes from Austria, and he, in the turn of the last century, I guess now, oh my goodness, time is an interesting thing. And he founded a school of thought, or a spiritual codex, I guess, called anthroposophy. And so that was sort of the beginnings of my really opening up to what was beyond, is through that anthroposophical context. I don't call myself an anthroposophist, if I said that right. But that opened me, right? That began to open me, and it began to help me recognize that that I had something more to offer than just my breath. And so that then led, at some point later on, I went in to get my master's degree, and that is in a field called eco-psychology, as I think you said in the introduction. And eco-psychology, in the very simplest kind of explanation of what it is, I see it as three circles in a Venn diagram of three circles, and one circle represents psyche, the who we are, the personality of us. One circle represents ecology, and the ecology of the world. I have a window right here, so if you see me looking out, that's why there's a window over here. So the ecology of the natural world, but also the ecology of us, because we're a part of that natural world. So that circle is ecology. And then the third circle is spirit, right? Our connection to divine, however the divine speaks to us. And so psyche, ecology, and spirit, when they are overlapped, we're there at the center point of that. And when one of those realms is out of balance, then there's a dis-ease within our system, whether it's emotional or psychological or physical or spiritual. There can be a dis-ease, not disease, but dis-ease, and a lack of ease within our whole. And so that was my training as in my master's degree and in the psychologies, is looking at it from this holistic, not just the psyche, but ecology and spirit as well. And so then that led me into a whole series of trainings, because, you know, once the door is opened, you want to open more doors. And so I'm like, what's next? What's next? What more can I learn? Who am I? Who am I? And so that led me to a body of work called The Work That Reconnects, with an amazing woman named Jonna Macy. And then I was led into core shamanism, which is the system I think many of you may know, begun by Michael Hardner, where he looked at the commonalities of practice that humans have around the planet, regardless of where they're from, and bringing those practices into a cohesion. And so I studied with a woman named Elida Birch and some others in that specific kind of vein of training that help open my visioning, help open my ability to connect to the spirit world. I dabbled with Reiki, and Reiki's very cool, but it was too passive for me. It was a little, it's not passive. I don't mean that on Reiki, but it's not as engaging as I am. And so though it helped me understand the currents of energies, of vibrations, it's not something that I actively practice, but I did spend a number of years learning Reiki. I also went through a number of years of studying herbalism. I'm not an herbalist, but I studied herbalism because I wanted to understand the plant kind, right? And how they can assist us, and how they are so plentiful and so ready to work with us. So there's a lot of years of that. And then I found Nikki Scully. And Nikki Scully has written a number of books, and one of which is called Alchemical Healing. And I really resonated with alchemical healing because it was a beautiful bringing together of the various kinds of ways that we can work with people to bring wholeness, to bring healing, to bring understanding. And so that then led me into the Egyptian mysteries and to Egypt. And Egypt is it's something very deeply special to me, and I'll share more about Egypt in a bit. So then there's Egypt, and Egypt, well, let me say one thing now about Egypt. So there's all these gods and goddesses of Egypt, right? And many people know there's Isis and Osiris. They're kind of like the most popular ones, but there are many, many more. And as I began to learn about them and make relation with them, I began to understand that they are deeply archetypal energies, right? It's not so much that I have a Thoth here. So it's not so much that there was a dude with a Thoth head walking around on the planet, right? But that the archetype of what Thoth represents is universal. And that the archetypes that come out of Egypt are related to the Norse, related to the Greek, related to the Indian, related to the Chinese, that there's a beautiful cohesion of those archetypal energies. And so as I learned about that from Egypt, of course, then me being the continual always seeker, then I'm like, well, what else is there and what else is there? And that led me to the Minister of Walking Prayer that I spoke about a moment ago, which opened my heart, aligned me with my path. And then just a year ago, when I turned 50, I'm like, okay, here I am. I've been learning this, I've been learning that, and I've been going deep inside of myself, trying to understand who I am, how I can be in service on this planet. And I recognized that all the things I've been learning were from places other than where my ancestors came from. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, what's that about? Why is that? And my ancestors mostly came from the north, from the Norse people. My father was born in Denmark, and a little bit of Italian is sprinkled in there somewhere, but mostly from that kind of top of the world, or bottom if you turn the world upside down. Up and down is all a human construct anyway. So from the north region of the world. And I'm like, well, why am I not connected there? What's going on there? And what I've come to realize only in this last year cycle is that, unlike Egypt, where it's written all over the place, you go to Egypt and there's hieroglyphs everywhere, right? So they've recorded their truth for the ages. But the Norse knowing was decimated. It was colonized. It was completely, not completely, it was nearly erased from our memory. And so I'm currently in this deep remembrance of what that means. And I learned that there is, and I'm connected to my Danish family very deeply. I know them and I've been there many times, but I never knew this until last year when I turned 50. Literally the day I turned 50, this showed up for me. There are these women called the vulva, and the vulva were the seer women. They were the shamans of those ancient times. And I realize that I am who I am because their blood flows through me. So now I'm in this process of remembering what that is. And I still don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. So that is my path of becoming a healer. And the synthesis of all of that comes through this healing alchemy, that it's the alchemizing of all these different parts of myself that I bring to my offering, to my life, to the clients I work with, to everything I do. So that's kind of the longer answer of how I got here to this moment today with all of you.
No, thank you for that. But I know that you've done so many different things, and it's also beautiful to see that eco psychology, where you may, one of the things that you have started that is quite still working in all of your works, and how healing alchemy is also covering all of the different fields that you're just mentioning right now. I'm also wondering, about healing alchemy in specific. Could you tell us a little bit more, what it is and where is it originated from, or is it completely universal, or is it quite Egyptian related? I just like to understand a little bit more about healing alchemy. Yeah.
Well, healing, everyone's a healer. That's the root of it. We're all healers, right? And when I work with my clients, I don't see myself as the healer. I'm not there to heal. I'm there to guide. I'm there to facilitate. I'm there to hold space for my client to be their own healer. Because if they can walk away from a session with me and have the tools in themselves to access spirit, to access guides, to access the essence of plant medicine, and not so much in taking it physically, ingesting it, but to connect in with the way the plants can help us on a spiritual level. If my client can open their understanding of themselves in the world, that's where healing gets in. And that's not because I did anything other than hold the space and help guide them. So healing alchemy is my own synthesis of everything that I've learned, and rooted deeply in alchemical healing from Nikki Scully. So what I do is I meet with somebody and sometimes with groups as well. And we begin with just breathing, right? Like we did today, breathing and coming into that relationship with our breath. And then from there, coming into relationship with the earth. And from there, coming into relationship with the cosmos. And so then when we're breathing in this way of connection to earth and sky, we arrive right here and right now. And this is the only moment we have, right? Everything that was before is the past. It's a memory. We can't change it. We can't go back. We can think about it. We can remember it, but it's not now. And everything in the future is a possibility, right? The weaving, the tapestry of life is actively being woven right now. And so when we arrive here, this is where we are. This is each breath is the moment. And so once we come into that place, then we can begin to look at our intention, to call in an intention. Intention is like the key that unlocks the door. And so speaking the intention, bringing that intention forward, and then following that intention. And so my work with individuals specifically is about listening. It's about watching. I mean, I do a lot of Zoom work now since we've been through this strange global pandemic moment. But even still on the screen, I watch their face, I watch their expression, I watch their emotion that moves through their body, and I listen to their words. I listen to what they say, and I ask a lot of questions. What do you notice is one of the biggest ones. What do you notice now? What do you notice now? And through that inquiry, we follow where I follow and they follow their visioning or their knowing or however it is that they're receiving information. And I question them. And each step, each moment brings us deeper and deeper into the healing, right? So that by the time that we are complete, they not only have received some piece of themselves that they needed to know, they've received healing on the physical level, on the spiritual level, on the emotional level, on the mental level. It brings it all together into a synthesis. So I don't know if that answers it so much. It's Healing Alchemy is, again, my own synthesis. It's not like there's a school out there where you go and learn Healing Alchemy. There is actually, it's called Life, right? Life is the school that we learn we alchemize in that way. So I don't know if there's any question about that or if I can say something more, but that's kind of the essence of it. Well, and I guess too, what is true is not only will we work with plants, again, the spirit of a plant, calling in what's here right now. Rosemary just showed up for me. Rosemary is a very aromatic, beautiful plant, helps with our memory. So I will reach out to rosemary, the genus, the life form that is rosemary, and I'll ask it to come in and help the client. So then that plant can show up, or perhaps I'm just, who's showing up? Like a hippopotamus just showed up. So I'm like, okay, there's a hippopotamus that's here. And so then we work with hippopotamus. And it's not just who shows up for me in my inner knowing. It's also me helping the client to understand what's showing up for them. And so that will be my default first. I'll ask, is there a plant that's here with you that wants to help you? And if the client's like, I don't know, no, then I'll bring in my piece. Or they might be, yeah, there is this beautiful little flower and it's got white petals on it. I'll be like, oh, how does that flower make you feel? Right. And so then we go into that inquiry. But hippos show up, all kinds of animals show up. And then the whole realm of deities are there to work with us. And just yesterday, I was with beautiful woman, and it was Thoth and the Hathors. She's coming through that Egyptian place. And so Thoth and the Hathors were there bringing amazing information to us about how humanity has this opportunity to resonate at a higher level and to come into a place of unification rather than separation, right? Because right now we're a little bit in a place of separation on the planet globally, not all of us, but how do we bring that together? And so that was yesterday, right? These deities came in. So elements come in, right? Not just earth, air, fire, and water elements, but like the periodic table of elements will show up and help us in healing, right? Again, I wouldn't bring, plutonium into the physical world with us, but plutonium may show up to do something in a healing way. That's a pretty heavy hitter. I'm not sure why that one showed up, but anyway, so healing alchemy is really reaching into all of the world of possibility to help us arrive into what we need in each moment to be whole. So that's kind of it. That's the circle of it.
Yeah, I think that's very fascinating. I mean, personally, they do also some healing alchemy, even I wasn't aware of, but it's beautiful how you connect with all the plant spirits and all the deities and the elements. And I was wondering also, when we speak about the deities, I guess like in shamanism, if we called spirit helpers for each tradition, it might be something else, or we title them in a different way. I think you mentioned also something about in Egypt about the Neteru. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly,
I love
but
the way you're pronouncing it.
okay. But it's about the goddesses and the gods, what you just touched upon, and these deities. And I wonder, like, if you could tell us a little bit more about that, and how that sort of was really influential in the past in the Asian traditions, and how it is like still really relevant today in this modern world. I mean, you talked already a little bit about it, like how it works with clients, but I'd love to understand a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, first let's start with that word Neteru. The word Neteru is the word for gods, and it's plural, Neteru, plural. One Neter, one Thoth, here he is again, is Neter. Many deities, I have Hathor here too. Funny enough, I've got Hathor and Thoth here. So here's Hathor and here's Thoth, right? So Neteru, there's plural. And Neteru are the deities, and the deities are reflections of nature. All of the deities are a reflection in some way of nature. Geb is earth. In the ancient time in Egypt, earth was masculine and the sky was feminine. Nuit was the sky. Happy is the river, Nile, right? Hathor is a cow. Thoth is an ibis, and also he shows up as a baboon, so that he has two different kind of qualities to him. Who else? Anubis is a jackal, right? And so the deity Sekhmet, she's a lioness. The deities are reflections of nature. And so what is really important about that is that the ancient ones weren't disconnected from the natural world. They were deeply in a relation and an understanding that they were nature, and that the gods and goddesses were nature. I believe that ancient Egypt wasn't polytheistic. I believe that ancient Egypt was monotheistic because of the wholeness, that circle that I started with today. They recognized that they were part of a whole, and each of the deities were aspects of that whole, right? And I think of modern day Egypt today, it's an Islamic country. And in Islam, Allah has 99 names, right? It's one Allah, but 99 different names of him. So it's the same kind of idea where there's one whole and many ways of access to that whole. And so Neteru, this word Neteru, as we move through time, we move into the Christian era. Christianity came into Egypt very strongly, and there's still today a very strong Coptic Christian roots in Egypt. And it's a small part of the population, but they've been carrying that Christian tradition since it came in. And when you're in the church in Egypt and you're listening to the priest pray, you'll hear him say Neter, Neter, and that's his word for God. That's their word for God. So Neteru, Neter. And then if you listen to Neter, Neter, in today's English language, we have this word nature, right? Which brings us right back around to the natural world. So that's the Neteru. The Neteru are nature, and they are gods. They are gods not in the like omnipresent creator kind of like Allah, God, Yahweh kind of way, but they are part of a whole. And so the ancients had relationship with them because of their archetypal qualities, right? Thoth was an ibis because you think about the ibis standing in the reeds, waiting for the papyrus reeds, right? Which was where the writing came from. And patient, observing, thoughtful, right? And then those qualities then become deified in a way that they recognized the again the archetypal principles of those deities. So the significance, I believe, of Egypt and why it's so accessible is, for one, it's not practiced by the original people anymore, right? Like in general, most of the modern day Egyptians are not practicing any kind of ancient faith. Yet the information about them is readily accessible. And when you begin to have relationship with these different deities, I keep looking at Thoth down here, you begin to recognize that they speak to us, right? That we can have a very easy and beautiful relationship with them. And that relationship is really about coming home and having a relationship with ourselves. Right. And I think, well, why don't I have the same relationship with like Odin and Freya, who are part of my Norse lineage, and they're not as accessible to me? And I think maybe part of that is because that particular vein of truth was so obscured, right? And it's only now beginning to be uncovered, but it's not as accessible. So I'm really grateful to the Egyptian world because it's taught me so much about my own nature. It's taught me so much about human nature and the nature of the world, right? The nature of the world. So just thinking if there's anything else specifically about them that I want to say. Well, yeah, actually. So there's one of them, and I'm going to talk more about her as we move on. She's Ma'at. Ma'at is kind of the quintessential truth, right? Capital T truth, not little t like my truth, your truth, but the truth, the sum total of truth. And she's the foundation of Egypt. The children would awaken into their lives, you know, coming forth from their mama's womb, and they somehow knew in their cellular memories that they were there to serve Ma'at, to serve truth. The Pharaoh would take on his pharaohship, and he would vow to receive Ma'at, to care for Ma'at, and return Ma'at at the end of his reign. Not that they all did that, but that was the vow, right? That they would care for truth, that they would care for truth above all else. And can you imagine if all the leaders in the world today vowed to receive truth, to care for truth, and to return truth at the end? We would have a very different world. I'm going to just hold that possibility for a moment. World leaders, come on. And so their society was built around this foundation of truth, this foundation of Ma'at. Ma'at not only was about truth, she was about justice. She was about harmony and balance. She was about reciprocity, the give and exchange of life, natural law, and cosmic order. So that's a lot that she held within her archetype. And I keep saying her because she was personified as a deity, as a goddess. But Ma'at is also a concept in ancient Egypt. It's both. It's both the goddess and pure truth, without any, humanizing to it in any way. And so Ma'at has been she's been my compass since I became aligned with Egypt. And she's the one that speaks to me the loudest and the one that I work with the most. A little bit more about her, which is interesting, is that the ancient Egyptians had what is called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Their name for it was the Book of Coming Forth by Day or by Light, right? Very different connotation than Egyptian Book of the Dead. And this is all about helping the soul to move through the veils, right? Move through the veils and into paradise, what they called the field of reeds. And so what would happen is, and this is, you'll see images of this. In fact, I'm going to share an image right now so to give you a context. This is the scene of the weighing of the heart. And so what would happen is the supplicant, that's this individual here and this individual here, the one in the white robe is the one who's passing through the veils. And the first thing that happens is that this individual goes to the halls of two truths. I think that's an interesting thing, not one truth, my truth, but my truth and the truth, the halls of two truths. And they go to 42 assessors, and you can see some of those 42 are seated up here. And they'll go to the first one and say, I did not, whatever it was, I did not, 42 times, I did not steal, I did not harm, I did not pollute the waters, I did not, right? And they're called the 42 negative confessions. And then once that declaration of what you didn't do, once all that has happened, then Anubis, who's this jackal-headed fella here, takes you to the scales of truth. And here you can see Ma'at. She has a feather on her head, and she's represented in this image as the scales. And Anubis takes the heart, not physically pulls the heart out of the chest, but the spiritual heart, which was called the Ab. He takes the Ab, which you can see this little image down here on the left side of the scale is the Ab, and it's represented by a vase, like a small vessel. And it's weighed on the scale with Ma'at's feather of truth on the other side, right? And it's looking to see if the heart is light. The heart is light. And in this particular image, oh yes, look, the heart is just a little bit lighter than the feather. And so this individual then is taken on to meet Osiris, who is this guy seated here, and he has Nephthys and Isis at his back. And from there, he can move on to the field of reeds. All along, Thoth, who I talked about earlier, Thoth is the scribe. He's writing it all. Like this very moment, archetypally, there's Thoth with his, his stylus and his papyrus recording, or maybe it's an iPad these days, who knows. Anyway, he's writing it all down and recording everything that's happening in the entirety of existence. And so in this moment in the scene, he's writing the weighing of the heart. This being right here is a crocodile, lion, hippo being. Her name is Ammit, and she's like the three fiercest beasties of the ancient world, all put into one. So you got to be careful with Ammit. She's a bit fierce and hungry, and her role in all of this is to consume the souls of those whose heart are heavier, right? So you really want to have a light heart. That's the goal of this. And so I think that though this is very much an afterlife, and that's why they called it the Egyptian Book of the Dead, because it's about what happens when you die. I began to be like, oh, wait, I don't want to wait till I'm dead for all of this to come to being. I want to really assess my life and what kind of person I am today, right now, and moving into the rest of my life, so that by the time I come to those veils, whether they look like this or something very different, but that I've lived a life of integrity, of ethical morality that's in alignment with my own truth. So I began a deep exploration here. Let me stop my sharing. Okay, so I began a deep exploration of what that means for me, and what that could mean for you, and how we can take something that was from, conservatively 2,000 and 3,000 years ago, but realistically maybe more like 10, or even some say 30,000 years, that these truths from the ancient Egypts trickled through. Depends on your belief system in the Egyptology realm about how old it actually is. And so that became a book that's about to be released. I'm very excited. I'm very excited. So before I go further into talking about that, do you have any other questions, or does anybody else have any questions?
Well, there are, I think, some questions in the chat. There was one question about they would love to know more about any relations of overlap between Egyptian gods and archetypal energies from other traditions, like from the Norse or the Greek, Indian, shamanic archetypes. So if there's like, I don't know, it's probably a big topic, this person also says.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do see, of course, a lot of similarities across cultures. And yeah, maybe what is your
Well,
take on this?
yeah, so let me put, rather than bringing in the names, right, of different, because they're each culture has named these archetypes something. Let's speak to them more in terms of what they are. So there's the archetype of the mother, right? I think pretty much all of the cultures have some aspect of the archetype of the mother. There's the high priestess, right? The wise woman would be another word for that. There's some archetype of that in many of the cultures. There is the resurrector, the one who resurrects, the one who brings forth in that way. There's the fierce one, right? The fierce one. In Egypt, that would be Sekhmet, right? Maybe it would be Kali in a different, right? Like, so when we begin to look at the archetypes are often, in my world, I think of them as the something, the magician, the mother, the father, right? The teacher, right? And so those archetypes then can be found pretty much wherever you look, whether it's the red road of the Americas, whether it's like Kuan Yin. She's a beautiful archetype of grace and compassion, right? And you'll find that archetype in other places. So rather than speaking to the specificity of different cultural understandings of those archetypes, because I know Egypt pretty well. I mean, I still, even as well as I know Egypt, it's still just the surface of what Egypt really is. I can't claim to be a master in it. I only, I've been studying it for 15 years, and 15 years when you're looking at 30,000 is like a speck of time. So, so whatever your culture is, you can find the archetypes. Does that answer? I don't know who asked that question, but that gives the answer to it. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think, yeah, that is of course a big question, but I do see some similarities here and there, And I think it's also great to learn about that Neteru. I never imagined that nature is maybe a word that derived from it. So thank you for this insight. It's wonderful to hear such a thing. And I saw another question, I think, in the chat about the elements. Someone was asking about Akasha as one of the elements as well, which was on your website. And someone is asking about the experience with the elementals and Akasha from you. So is there anything that you would like to share around that?
Sure. So when I work with the elements, I work with my fingers actually. So each of my fingers represents a different element. So my thumb is water and it's a crescent. And so I'll call in water to work with a client. So maybe if I bring in an herb, I also want to bring in water to help rinse that through the body. My pointy finger is a triangle that represents fire. And Akasha is the middle finger. And Akasha is like where two circles overlap, that shape that's kind of like this. That's the symbol that I use for Akasha, or it could also be an egg, like a cosmic egg. So that's Akasha. I'll talk about that more in a second. And then this finger I use it as a square to call in earth, right? And earth comes in so many ways, just like water. Water can be cold, it can be misty, it can be flowing, it can be waves, it can be fog, it can be snow, right? So there are so many ways to work with water, and fire as well. It can be a raging fire, it can be smoldering, it can be a spark. It just depends on the client and what they need in terms of that element. And then the last one is air, which is a little circle with my little finger. And what I love about air is, when I'm in Egypt, it's hot. It's usually hot. Some days it's not as hot, but there's been days it's like off the charts hot, like 40 degrees Celsius. And I've started doing this little thing. I'm like, well, if I have the elements at my fingertips, what if I call in a little air? And so I started doing it, and I was like this, and I'll wait a second, and then all of a sudden a little breeze comes through. And I'm like, 9 times out of 10, when I do this, it works. It blew my mind. I'm like, it works. So calling in air to help cool off. Air also can help open up. It can help us speak. If we feel like we can't speak, calling in some air to help bring out that ability to speak. So Akasha is the 5th element. And in my practice, Akasha is that element that helps us connect to, I'll call it the library of knowledge. So that everything that Thoth is writing, right? We talked about him being the scribe. All that is getting stored in the Akashic library. And so if I have someone and they are dealing with something that is either from their childhood or maybe even a past life kind of experience that is moving through them still, I'll bring in that Akasha. I'll call in the element of Akasha to help bring that memory. It can also be about moving into the future time. I mean, because Thoth, he's not beholden to our linear time frame, right? Us humans, we're born, we move through our life, and we die. But time and existence is more like a whole that's happening all at once. And so he's written everything that ever has been, ever is, and ever will be. And so we can use Akasha as healers to access those memories, past memories, current memories, future memories. Future memory is an interesting kind of like future memory, huh? But to bring that forward. So I'll use Akasha that way. Akasha can also be a solvent to help dissolve things that no longer serve. So we use Akasha in a number of different ways. I have this image, and maybe we all can just go there for a minute. I have this image of the Akasha as the sea, like a beautiful body of water, but it's not water, it's Akasha. And sometimes when I'm feeling a little uneasy or stressed or out of sorts, or have had a bad day, or something really terrible has come to my knowing, I'll just go and lay on my back in the sea of Akasha and just allow my body to relax, to be held up by that Akasha. And I can just take a deep breath then and allow myself to be held, and allow whatever it is that I'm holding to dissolve, knowing that the Akasha's got it. I don't need to hold it so much. So that's the elements and how I work with them. They're really potent. I see them as the foundation, like Ma'at is the foundation of Egypt. The elements are the foundation of healing for me. Like they're the not the basic as in less than, but they're the base, right? They're the base. Without air, fire, water, earth, and Akasha or spirit, I'll call Akasha spirit for the moment, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have this life, this moment to share with each other. So that's what I know about elements in a
Well,
nutshell.
that's quite an interesting take, and using your fingers as well. Yeah, it's very new to me. I would say, like, yeah, the elements are, also, of course, also very important in shamanism in general.
Yeah.
Um, are there like other areas you would see, like, similarities or commonalities or like bridges between the ancient Egyptian mythologies and cosmologies that that you also see in other parts of shamanism? Could you tell us
Well,
about
yeah,
that
well, the
with the elements,
first,
perhaps? Mhm.
right, the first thing that comes through when you ask that is like Nuit is the starry sky, right? And she's also the mother. She and Geb, the earth, were in love with each other. And it's through the portal of Nuit and Geb that Osiris and Isis and Set and Nephthys and the elder Horus, those 5 children came through that. And Osiris and Isis were given the Delta lands, and Osiris, every step he took, green grew from him, right? He regenerated the earth and brought it to life. He also became the god of the dead because of a whole story. He and his brother had a thing, and then Set was given the deserts, and he had to fight for his food, right? He had to hunt. He had very little to eat. So anyway, there's a whole story there. I don't need to go down that track. You can look it up. And Seshet, she's one of the goddesses, and she is she's basically like the librarian, right? If Thoth is the one writing the book, she's the librarian, but she's also represents the star Sirius, right? And so there's that. There are those that correlate the positioning of the pyramid specifically to the constellation Sirius. So that cosmological connection is very present. I think the ancients, I mean, I don't know this, I wasn't there, right? At least not in this current form. But I think they believed that Egypt was a temple of the cosmos, right? That they weren't, as I said before, they recognized that they were a part of nature, and nature was a part of the cosmos. So there was no separation. They weren't living in the Western kind of mind that I live in and I fight against sometimes. They lived in this immersive reality where inner and outer world were not two different things. So those of us that walk in both worlds, like I'm going through my day and I'm doing my thing, and then I'll go and meditate, I'll journey, I'll connect in with spirit, right? With the ancients, it was all one thing. The living and the breathing and the doing, from the mundane to the spiritual, was all part of that deeply connected relationship to Ma'at, to the natural world, right? To cosmic order. There wasn't a separation. In my mind, I fight against that separation, between the parts of myself. So I don't know if that answers that question, but that's what comes through right now.
Yeah, I think definitely like, yeah, also, of course, the upper world and the cosmos, like how shamanism also relates to that. Like the Egyptians, yeah, clearly were, yeah, very much in connection with the stars as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And also, I guess, the thought about the death and how they saw this whole death, life, rebirth sort of,
Right.
process. That's also, of course, related to that. So, yeah, yeah.
I think that, again, this is not something written somewhere that is a truth, the capital T truth, but I think that the ancient Egyptians all were shamanic. Whether it was the mother making the bread, or whether it was the pharaoh in the temple in the Holy of Holies, or the priests, that they lived a shamanic life, right? They lived a shamanic life. They weren't separated from nature. They weren't separated from spirit. They were deeply in communion all the time and lived a very symbolic life. And you see that in the way that they expressed their language through the hieroglyphs. Deeply symbolic, deeply archetypal, deeply, yeah, just deeply connected.
Yeah, beautiful. So
And we
maybe,
can be too, right? It's,
yes,
we have that in us. We are nature. We are not separate from all of that we're talking about. So, yeah.
absolutely. I'm just going to see if there's any questions in the chat. Um, let me see. I don't think at this moment, but if anybody has anything, feel free to type them in the chat, and then we can cover them as well. So yeah, we will get to your book soon. But before we go into that, I was just also very, curious about your statement that you say on your website as well about showing up and paying attention. And since you were
Mm.
talking about remembrance, and we all really need to listen within, and it's all in there. Can you tell us a little bit about that phrase that you use? Because I think it's really
Sure.
beautiful. Yeah.
I use this a lot, and my students can attest to that. That I'm like, show up and pay attention, everybody. So Nikki, who I spoke about before, for years and years in various context classes, she would say, the coin of the realm is to pay attention. And now the realm is that inner visioning, the journey world, the connection with spirit, that realm. The coin of the realm is to pay attention. You pay with your attention, right? So when we're going and connecting to, let's say, a coyote is here right now, and I'm like, hello, coyote. I'm giving it my attention. I'm acknowledging it, right? And then if I'm going to work with that coyote, then I begin to form relation. And that forming of relation is paying attention. And so I recognize fairly quickly that it's not just about the coin of the inner realm, it's also the coin of the outer realm, right? When we show up and pay attention to our children, we have a different result than when we're ignoring them. When we show up and pay attention to our friends, right, we build a different kind of relationship. So the coin, to pay attention, right? Not a dollar, not a euro, not a whatever currency you use, but our attention. And so years later, years pass, and I am with another one of my dear teachers, Jyoti Ma. And Jyoti is who I met her through my ministry training with the Center for Sacred Studies. And she's also a delegate of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations, which is becoming part of the Shaman Directory. And so I'm on a call with her and a bunch of other people. And she says, the key to the realm. And I'm immediately like, the key? I know the coin. I'm paying attention right now. I'm paying attention. What's the key? And she says, the key is to just show up. And it was one of those moments where I was floored, because I was like, if I show up, there's the key, and I pay attention, everything I need is here, right? Everything I need is here. It's not always what I want, right? Life isn't always perfect and wonderful and happy. Sometimes I'm showing up and paying attention and I'm breaking down and I'm really sad and I'm grieving. Sometimes I'm showing up and I'm paying attention and I'm in relation with somebody and something is evolving. Sometimes I'm showing up and I'm paying attention, I'm cooking dinner, right? And so it became my mantra to life. These two women, these two pillars in my life, each gave me a clue to a whole that has become the bedrock of my life. Show up, pay attention. Because when we show up and we pay attention, we notice what's here. We notice what's here within us. We notice what's here around us, right? We notice how we feel, how we're responding or reacting to some stimulus around us. So I invite you to play with that, right? Just really show up and pay attention, because it brings us into the present moment is what it does. And as I spoke about earlier, the present moment is the only time there really is, right? The memories are of what was or what will be. But showing up and paying attention brings us here, brings us now. So I'm forever indebted to both of them for giving me these two pieces, right? So that I really can show up. And I'm not always so good. Sometimes I don't show up. Sometimes I don't pay attention, right? I'm very human. And I forget, but I strive to show up and pay attention. Show up, pay attention.
I think it's a great motto, a great life motto. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely to bring that on board. Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for asking. Yeah. I think my students sometimes are like, okay, she's saying that again. I'm like, but it's so important. It's so important to show up and pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we maybe move on to your book? And because you have a beautiful newly book written about Ma'at, and she's also, of course, about truth. I
Yes.
haven't read it myself yet; it's not out yet.
It's not out yet.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, tell us a little bit about this book. So exciting! Yeah.
Well, I've shared a bit about Ma'at already. Here, let me give you a picture of her so you can have an image in your mind. This first one comes from the temple walls. And she has the feather that's on her head is an ostrich feather. There are two deities that have the ostrich feather on their head. One is Ma'at, and the other is Shu, who is the god of air. He's air, basically. Speaking of elementals, right? The elements get deified in ancient Egypt as well. And she's a daughter of the sun, and you see the sun disk here on her head. So that's one image of her. And let me show you another one. And this is another common way that she's seen, is kneeling with her wings outspread. And so when I first started going to Egypt, she's who really started speaking to me the loudest. Thoth and Anubis were there also in the beginning, but Ma'at was essential. And so I began to listen to that. I showed up, I paid attention. Why is Ma'at speaking to me? Why is she guiding me? What does she want me to know? And I love this. This is a quote. It comes from a papyrus from the Middle Kingdom called the Eloquent Peasant. And the approximate date was about 1850 BCE. And it says, "Speak, Ma'at. Do, Ma'at, for she is mighty. She is great and endures. Her value rests in the hands of those who use her." Right? And I love that, because it's up to us to hold truth, right? It's up to each of us to hold truth, and her value rests in the hands of those who use her. Speak Ma'at, speak truth, do Ma'at, act in truth, right? So that sums it up to me, for me, in terms of who Ma'at is. And I recognized really early on, as I spoke earlier, I showed you that image of the afterlife scene, the weighing of the heart. And I'm like, okay, I want a heart as light as the feather, right? I want to have a light heart. How do I have a light heart? How do I lighten my heart? And I recognized that the way to do that was to look at these negative confessions, these 42 negative confessions. And I'm like, yeah, but this is my own dialogue in my own head right now. Yeah, but if the negative confessions are about what I didn't do, and I'm like, oh, wait, what if I turn it around? What if I make it the positive declarations? So, what are 42 things, positive declarations that I can make in my life? And so that was sort of the beginning of it. And I do a lot of journey work myself. I also do a lot of guiding of journey work with others. And I began to see that there were specific downloads, journeys that came through over a course of about 10 years that all wove together into this cohesion, this whole that became the journey that is offered in this book. So this book is it tells a little bit of my story. It tells a little bit about who Ma'at is. It shares some of the gods and goddesses and what they represent. And then it guides the reader on an inner experience to align with truth, so that ultimately at the end, your heart is as light as the feather. And so it's divided. I've divided the book into a number of sections. One of the sections is the truth, right? It's the shortest section in the book. Biggest topic, the truth. But, we would need, I don't even know how many books it would take to write the truth. Thoth knows. And then there's my truth, right? How did I come here? Why is this book even here? Then there's our truth, right? And the collective that we are. And then there's a truth, and this is about Ma'at, who she is, her mythos. It's about the gods and goddesses. It's about the weighing of the heart and the 42 negative confessions. And then there's your truth, which is about creating a foundation for yourself. And then there's a journey of truth, which is this journey that I'm speaking of. And then finally, there's more truth at the end. And so through each of these different sections, I bring the reader into alignment with their own truth, right? And so I thought, I haven't done this before because the book, let me show you I'll show you the cover. The woman, Normandy Ellis, who is an amazing woman, she's writing the foreword for me. And as soon as the foreword is finished, then I will get it up. So my hope is summer solstice is when it will be ready, but it may be a little bit beyond that. I'm kind of working on Ma'at's time right now. So this is the cover of the book, and you see here in the center Ma'at. And one of the most important pieces that I want to bring from this image is that we're each the scale, right? If we put our arms out to the side, I'm not pulling them all the way out because then my hands are not seen. But if my hands are the balancing points, the pivot is at the heart, right? That's the pivot. So it's not as much about this as it is about the center point, right? And we move through our life and we can weigh our heart against the feather. Is my heart heavy? Why is it heavy? How do I lighten it up? The beings around the circle are the 42 assessors. This lioness who is here is Sekhmet. And Sekhmet her role is to be the guardian of truth. That is her role archetypally. And she does other things. She's a fierce warrior, compassionate warrior, but her job is to guard truth. And then this fella over here is Thoth in his ibis form, sacred ibis form. And then the lotus is that awakened being. That's what that represents. And the papyrus represents, the recording, the remembering, the wisdom. And of course, then there's the Nile and so on. So there's a lot represented in this. And the blank space is like, for me, it's the mystery. It's the becoming, it's the arriving, it's the showing up and paying attention, right? To allow that which was not known to become known. So that is the cover, which is very exciting to share with you all. And I thought what I would do is read a couple different excerpts just to kind of give you an introduction to Ma'at, and not so much about trying to promote the book, but about sharing Ma'at. That's really the point of it, right? Does that feel okay?
We would be honored. We'd love to hear an excerpt. I think we're the first probably to hear something about your book. So yes, please do.
So the first piece I'll read is called, this comes from My Truth, and it's Why This Now? And this really kind of summarizes why this, why Ma'at, why now? I am a seeker of truth. I am a seeker of understanding the synthesis of my purpose and place in this lifetime, woven from the threads of what was and what is. In this, my path has taken a circuitous route as I follow my heart's direction. My heart now calls for me to share the who and what of Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian archetype and deity of truth, justice, harmony, balance, reciprocity, natural law, and cosmic order, in order to deepen the understanding of her spiritual ethics. I know that everything in my life has led me to this moment. I have been called to Ma'at in a deeply profound way. Although I have long known of this deity distantly and abstractly, it was not until my first visit to Egypt in 2012 with Nikki Scully that I began to contemplate Ma'at's identity and significance on a deeper level. A decade and more than 15 trips to Egypt later, I have learned, served, sought, led, shared, and stood in awe time and time again as witness to the mysteries that Egypt has revealed. I carry much gratitude for the guidance Ma'at has shown me in this time. My personal mythos has continued to unfold within the fabric of this ancient civilization and within the truth of Ma'at. At times, I feel as if the land of Egypt has urged me forward. The experiences that led me to Ma'at have come from walking through the temples and holy places, both as a seeker and a leader. During my time there, I have created, managed, and facilitated special journeys for those participants who are called to join my Sacred Witness pilgrimages. Together, we entered and received from the mysteries of Egypt. The gifts of Ma'at offers a life-affirming perspective on the Egyptian afterlife ritual of the weighing of the heart as a modern path of inspired personal morality. Through the process articulated in this book, you are invited to create your own personal code of ethics and to record in your own book of becoming light. Your book is meant not only to serve merely as a record of what was, it is a guide to help you truly incarnate into your truth and life's purpose. There are many different codes of ethics and ideas of morality. All hold some of the threads of truth. I invite you to find those threads that inspire you to be the best you can be. As these threads are woven into a collective and comprehensive tapestry, perhaps humanity itself can be rewoven into one people whose future embodies more compassion, more peace, more acceptance, more understanding, more prosperity, and more love for all. It is my hope that this work guides each who engage with it towards a more effective stewardship of this fractured world. If we can unite in compassion and love, then perhaps we can truly become the caretakers of Earth, our precious planetary body. I believe we live in a time when healthy, whole, and collaborative leaders are being called forth to help us remember who we are and why we are here. These emergent leaders follow a deep call to truth and understand that their power and service come through empowering others to achieve health and wholeness. I believe each of us has the capacity to become such leaders, and that each of our individual choices co-creates our collective future. Each choice ripples outward in unseen and unknown ways. What are you choosing? So then the next part I would like to share is coming from the section called A Truth, and it's titled Envisioning Ma'at. Envision the birth of the universe as matter coalesces into planetary spheres, spheres which are pulled into perfect orbit around newly shining suns, and as solar systems are pulled into a spiraling dance with others of their kind, becoming great galactic systems. Ma'at is cosmic order. Envision an elementally charged planet bursting with volcanic activity and volatile weather patterns, as the elementals of earth, water, fire, and air settle into equilibrium within the newly formed planetary sphere. Ma'at is balance. Envision how the perfect combination of heat and cold, pressure and gravity, and elemental configurations fuse with a divine spark as life emerges on the world stage, seeking to reproduce itself in a myriad of combinations and shapes, using time and space as its canvas. Ma'at is natural law. Envision all of nature in a fluid and dynamic exchange of giving and receiving. Ma'at is reciprocity. Envision the totality of human interactions, how we organize ourselves, how we relate to one another, how we hold ourselves accountable. Ma'at is justice. Envision the possibility of humanity coming into a balanced and reciprocal relationship with the web of life. Ma'at is harmony. Envision all that was, is, and will be in the continuous unfolding of deep time. Ma'at is truth. So I have one more. Do you want to hear one more, or is that good?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then this next piece comes from Your Truth, and it's your 42 positive dedications. As I sought to understand the mythos of Ma'at and the 42 negative confessions, I felt a deep desire to transform them into positive dedications. I came to see that it is time to reframe this ancient ritual to serve the here and now. To help you establish your truth and to prepare you to enter the guided journey ahead, you'll be asked to create your own 42 positive dedications. Doing so requires an evaluation of your life and clarification of what is important to you. These dedications emanate from the truths that live within you, and as such, they are deeply personal and unique. These 42 dedications are vows meant to align you with your truth and the greater truth of which you are a part. Bringing this kind of intentionality to what is important to you will help your heart to be as light as the feather. Ani's negative confessions previous in the book may help serve as a guide, and as can any of the codes from around the world that are available to you. Yet, unlike the negative confessions which look backwards and declare what you did not do, the 42 dedications are forward-facing. You will envision the future and dedicate yourself to actualizing it. As an example, I'm humbled to share my own 42 positive dedications. 1. I dedicate myself to looking after my body as best I can. 2. I dedicate myself to protecting life as best I can. 3. I dedicate myself to living my life fully. 4. I dedicate myself to keeping clean my mind, body, and soul, as well as the waters, earth, and air. 5. I dedicate myself to sharing my intimacy in appropriate ways with only those I love. 6. I dedicate myself to not meddling in the affairs of others unless I have been asked for help. 7. I dedicate myself to using all tools and weapons mindfully with intention and never to cause harm. 8. I dedicate myself to respecting and protecting the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional bodies of people and animals. And trees. I should add, and trees and plants. 9. I dedicate myself to not taking anything that is not mine for the taking. 10. I dedicate myself to using resources mindfully and with awareness of the impact of my choices. 11. I dedicate myself to breathing deeply when challenging emotions arise, honoring the messages received without allowing it to cause any unnecessary or unwelcome reactions. 12. I dedicate myself to always being grateful for what I have, regardless of how much or how little. And there are 42 of these, so I'm not going to read all 42 of them. But the last one, I'll say 42. I dedicate myself to acting in such a way as others are glad I'm alive. So whether you read this book when it comes out, I invite all of you to take a moment in your world to look at what you're dedicated to, whether there's 42 of them you want to write out, or whether it's a few, by taking that time to really arrive into what is true, is an amazing process. It's a truly amazing process. So I think
Wow,
that's
thank
what
you.
I have to share for today.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I believe these sections that you just read for us right now, um, very powerful stuff. I think, yeah, very relevant also in the times that we're living in right now. Also, the reflections to yourself and the rememberment of each of us, and that we can unite also what we have also, of course, with Shamans Directory as our vision for one fire, one medicine. So it fits all perfectly there. I also, in the first excerpt, I was kind of wondering, you were talking also about your pilgrimages, and maybe you want to share also a little bit about your Egyptian pilgrimages as well. Like, are you still doing them, and what people can expect, like when they, travel with you and visit these ancient sites?
Well, yeah, I am. I haven't been back since March of 2020 when things got a little wonky around the planet, and I miss it. However, I have a tour or pilgrimage coming up in February, so not too long in the scheme of things. And so I think first just giving gratitude to Nikki Scully for introducing me to Egypt. And I want to just honor her that way by sharing a little bit about what brought her there. She was she was married to this man named Rock Scully, and Rock Scully was the tour manager for a rock and roll band called the Grateful Dead. And and so she was in the inner circle of this band, right? And the Grateful Dead in 1978 or 9, oh gosh, now I'm not remembering. Anyway, the late 70s, the Grateful Dead played a concert at the Great Pyramids. It was the first concert of its kind ever to happen in Egypt. And so Nikki went with the band to Egypt to be a part of that scene and that concert and that experience. And she fell in love with Egypt, and Egypt fell in love with her. And so then in the early 80s, she went back again, and she began to lead tours there. And so over those 30 years, she led more than 60 journeys to Egypt with many people. My cat is deciding to come here now. Hello, everybody. This is Mao. Let me get him off my desk. Hold on. Oh. Go on. He's like, no, I want to be a part of it. So in that time, she developed a deep, he's determined. Okay, he's going to sit on my lap. Sorry, everyone. You're a good kitty. I know. She developed deep relations with the land of Egypt, the people of Egypt, the Neteru of Egypt. And so when I came into the picture and started working with Nikki, initially with alchemical healing, I also equally began studying the Egyptian mysteries with her. And then in 2011, my mom passed away. She had cancer, and it was a long 2-year battle with cancer that finally took her. And it was a difficult 2 years. As any of you who have been through that with anyone you know or love, you know it's a challenging road. And so at the end of that year, that was October of that year, just a week before I turned 40, she left this plane. And I was in a state of course, grief. And also, I didn't know it at the time, but I had forgotten what joy was. I just didn't know what joy was anymore, how to touch it, how to feel it, yeah, I knew there was a word, J-O-Y, joy, but what it was, I wasn't in touch with it anymore. And Nikki invited me to come to Egypt in 2012 with her, February of 2012. She was leading a tour with an artist named Alex Gray and Alex's wife, Allison. And he's an extraordinary artist. If you've seen any of his work, it's quite shamanic, actually. And she said, come assist me. I'll give you a little discount, help me out. And so I got to Egypt, and from the very get-go, I was working because I was assisting. And so I learned Egypt through the lens of running a tour. And I went back again and again and again. And then in 2014, Nikki, in her aging process, recognized that she wouldn't be going back to Egypt any longer, but that she wanted to keep her company going. Shamanic Journeys is what her company is called. And so I began to manage her tours in 2015, 16, 17, 18. So for 4 years, I did 2 or 3 tours a year through her company, Shamanic Journeys. Some with different teachers, Normandy Ellis and Sandy Corcoran is one of them. And Debbie Clarkin was another one I did tours with. And then I recognized that it was time for me to branch out on my own, in union with Nikki, ready to retire fully and to not be holding the business anymore. And so I initially opened the company as Mysteries of Egypt, and began running my own tours. And then I've shifted Mysteries of Egypt under the umbrella of Sacred Witness Pilgrimages, because ultimately my goal as the world opens back up is to not just go to Egypt, but to bring people to other sacred places around the world as well. So that's kind of the background of it. And what happens when we go there is I usually bring a group between 8 and 24, depending on the tour, depending on a number of things. And we arrive into the mystery of Egypt. We arrive into the sacred land. We arrive into the modern context and people who are there to help hold us and care for us while we're moving through the country. We visit not all, there's more than we can do in 2 weeks, but many of the temples and sacred places, we arrive in a way where I recognize the tour as a ritual. From the moment someone decides to come, whether it's 2 months before or 2 years before, when they make that commitment, they enter into the process of coming home to Egypt. And then when we arrive in Egypt, the entire journey is a ritual. Even if we're having fun, just a little side, that first trip in Egypt in 2012, I remembered my joy. It helped me remember my joy, just to bring that background. So we arrive, whether we're playing or eating or hanging out on our private dahabeya or whatever in the temple, walking through the ancient layers of time, whatever we're doing, it's all part of a process, a ritual, a ceremony of becoming, of coming home, and coming home not just to the land of Egypt, but coming home to ourselves. And so we visit the places, we work with the archetypes, right? We've been talking about the Egyptian Neteru as archetypes of ourselves. And so as we go into the various temples, we work with those archetypes. So we'll visit, often I have a private visit at Philae, which is the temple for Isis, or Aset is her true name. Isis is a Greek version of her name. And so we'll arrive pre-dawn, before the sun's even up. Right? The stars are still overhead, and Isis is Philae is on an island in the middle of the Nile. So we boat in the starlight night, early morning, and we have a moment where nobody else is on the island except for our group, and we welcome the sun rising. And I don't want to say too much about what we do there, but it's beautiful, right? And I have usually 2 to 4 private visits where we're there either before the temple opens to the public or after it closes. And it's amazing when we're there, when nobody else is there, no other tourists are there, because there's a different quality. It's almost like you can hear the walls speaking. Almost, right? Speaking maybe in a different way than with words. You can feel the energy of the place. I always think of the temples of Egypt, and temples all around the world for that matter, as acupressure points on the earth, right? And so when we arrive into a place like that and we walk with reverence, we walk with humility, we walk with presence, each of our footsteps is activating that point on the earth that then helps the whole, right? And so that's how I encourage us to walk with that reverence and that presence. And so like at the temple of Philae, we'll work with Isis. It's her temple, so she's the one we're invoking. If we're at Edfu, that's the temple for Horus the Younger, Isis's son. So we'll invoke his energy. And so each of these places then become a part of us. And I find that the things that happen in Egypt are miraculous. I mean, I've had experiences there that I can't explain. For example, we were in the Great Pyramid for an evening private visit on one of my tours. And I was looking up at the ceiling, and it was very quiet in the room, right? We were in the king's chamber, and I'm looking at the ceiling, and suddenly it starts to waver, sort of like a mirage on the road has that wavery quality. The ceiling started to waver, and then it disappeared, and there was the stars. And I'm like rubbing my eyes because, the like conscious part of me is like, what? No, I don't believe it. So I'm rubbing it and it wavers for a minute. And then I got better sense of myself. I'm like, don't question this. Don't doubt this. Just receive this. Whatever this is, just receive it. And so I did. I stood there under how many tons of rock looking at the stars. Right. So it's these kind of experiences. It's only happened once. I've been in there a lot of times, never happened again, but still, Egypt does this to us. It's miraculous. You're being distracting. I don't know if you can hear him, but he's purring very loudly right now. And so that's you know, in a very small synopsis, that's Egypt, right? We walk together, we share together, we experience together, um, amongst ourselves in the group, but also with the Neteru, coming into relationship with the Neteru, understanding who they are, showing up and paying attention, right, to those relations. And it's amazing. I miss it. I'm really excited to be going back in February. So that's Egypt. It's
Amazing.
really
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
it's
And
definitely on
this
my bucket
time,
list.
yeah, I this group, I have an extension where we're going to a place called Siwa. And Siwa is in the middle of the desert. It's in the western desert near to Libya. And there's a temple there. It's called the Temple of the Oracle. And I've never been. I've been wanting to go for years, years. The last time I wanted to go was on one of the trips I'd arranged an extension, and then I got invited to participate in a movie, of all things, as a consultant, and they happened to be filming during the time that I was supposed to go to Siwa. So I'm like, help with a movie or go to Siwa. Siwa's not going anywhere. This movie is a one-time deal. And so I was in a movie. I was in this movie called Luxor, which is, it's an okay movie. It's a love story and has some amazing cinematography. And I got to play myself as a tour leader. So it's Indigo as Indigo. So anyway, so I didn't go to Siwa on that trip. I went to the movie land. And so this time I get to go back, and I'm feeling, you know, in that shamanic way, when we work with shamanic energy, and we show up and pay attention, we can feel, right? Feel where we need to go, feel what's calling us. And I feel this oracle temple calling me. And so I think there's some message I need to receive there, some knowing, some wisdom, something. I don't know. I'll let you know next year after I'm there. But there are a few spots left on this tour. So if anybody feels Egypt calling them, you're welcome to reach out to me and inquire more deeply. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it's
Thanks,
very,
Ron.
very exciting.
Yeah.
Actually, there was someone in the chat asking, since we're talking about the temples and the different deities, about the Isis temple you were touching upon as well. Is there anything else that you could share about this temple of Isis in specific?
Specifically?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, one of the things that's interesting about it, I'm going to put you down. You go. um, it's not in its original location. So it's in Aswan, and originally they built. There's two dams in Aswan. There's the old dam, which was built around the turn of the 19th century, um, and then they built the new dam, the big dam, and that was finished around 1970. And so Philae is between those two dams. And after the first dam was built, it flooded the original island. And then when the second dam was being built, it was flooded even worse. And the temples were flooded on an annual basis anyway, because that was part of the rhythm of Egypt, was the flooding times. And it was essential to the people of ancient times, the floods were, because it's what brought the topsoil that created such a rich and nutritious earth for growing. And so these two dams stopped the flooding, flooded the temple of Philae permanently. And so UNESCO, am I saying that right? The World Heritage folks, they came in and worked with a number of, or they made it a heritage site, and they moved the entire temple to another island that was a little higher above the land. So that's the first piece. When you're there, you're not on the original island, because it's the original island is flooded permanently now. But it doesn't really matter. Like, it's still, you still feel the essence of it, like the stones of the temples. You feel the love, the dedication to Isis, to the mother, to what she represents. I just had a child wake up in my house. I don't know if you hear the noise, but that's what's going on. So it's an amazing place. It when we're working with this archetype of Isis, she is the mother, right? She is the mother. She's the one who nurtures and cares for her family, for her people, for her son Horus. And so when we're there, we can really feel that embrace of the mother. Not the scornful mother, because there's that archetype of the mother too, and then but the loving mother, right? You really feel that. It's a beautiful temple. I'm like, I was about to say it's my favorite temple, but then I realized that every temple is my favorite temple. It's like the temple I'm in is the favorite temple, right? Wherever I am, if I'm at Kamombo, that's my favorite temple. If I'm at Edfu, that's my favorite temple. They're all each amazing, and you really do feel the difference of energy from one temple to the next, depending on the archetype and who it's dedicated to. So I don't know if that answers the question about Philae. There's more we could say about it, I'm sure, but it's beautiful. And just like there's a moment when we're boating to the island in the morning, and the stars are overhead and the water is still and dark, right? So you have the dark sky, you have the dark water, and it's almost like you're floating through the Akasha, moving through worlds to go somewhere ancient, somewhere future, like the ancient future, the future ancient, I don't know what. And then to walk into the temple when it's still dark. We usually have little tea lights to help us see, and to just listen. And then at some point the birds start singing, right? Because they start waking up, because we get there before the birds wake up, and the birds start singing. And they fill the temple with their song. And then at some point, then the light starts coming, and the dawn is bringing the new day, right? And it's miraculous every single time. I often am in tears of awe when I'm there, no matter how many times I've been there.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I think you must experience it for yourself really to really understand what the temples are like. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm also kind of wondering, like, about your name, Zahra Indigo. Where does it come from? Because you were just saying about indigo and Egypt, so maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Well, so Indigo is my middle name, and I have a legal first name that I don't use anymore, so I'm not even going to bother saying it here. But when I started going to Egypt in 2013, one of my guides, Same, he says to me, Indigo, kind of like that, Indigo, your name in Arabic is Zahra. And I was like, Zahra? Okay. And I'm like, so I looked it up, and Zahra didn't mean indigo. It meant other things. It meant flower. It meant pure, right? To clean, to purify. And I'm like, how's he correlating Zahra to indigo? And then I realized this powder they have in the herb shops, and it's a blue powder. They call it an indigo powder. And you put it in it's a bluing agent, right? You put it in your whites to make your whites whiter. And that powder is called Zahra powder because it purifies the whites. And so that's how he related my name Indigo to Zahra. And at some point along the way, I recognized that, well, before I started taking the name on, I actually embodied it. In Egypt, like in many places in the world, there's a lot of single-use plastic in the environment, and by no fault of anybody except for maybe the plastic manufacturers, it's everywhere. And I thought, there needs to be something we can do with this. And so I began exploring options. I'm going to grab something because then I can show you a tangible thing that I didn't think I was going to share about this, but here I am sharing, and I have it right here. So I recognized that maybe I could do something with that. And so I started first by teaching how to take a plastic bag and make a strip out of it, and then to crochet with it with plarn. It's called plarn, plastic yarn. And then I realized that you can weave with it. So this has been woven on a loom, and it's plastic bags. This is all single-use plastic bags that have been reclaimed to make a mat. And so this became part of my master's project, looking at how we can alchemize, right, plastic into something useful. And that master's project became a nonprofit foundation, very small nonprofit foundation that I called Zahra Handworks Foundation. And I claimed the name Zahra for that foundation. And then over the years of working in Egypt, we've supplied looms to women over there so that they can then weave, not just with the plastic, but also with reclaimed cotton from the cotton industry. They started calling me Zahra. And so in Egypt, the Egyptians call me Zahra. Most people in America call me Indigo. And so I go by both, or Zahra Indigo. And then I learned one little last piece. I learned that Indigo in the Nubian language, not in Arabic, but in the Nubian language in the south of Egypt, Indigo means here you go. It's a term of giving. Here you go. So I'm like, here you go. Here's a loom. Here you go. And so anyway, that's my name. And then the Rønlov name, shamanically, do we have time? Yeah. Shamanically, Rønlov is interesting because it's a Danish name, R-U, with the little slash through it, R-U-N-L-O-V. Rondo is how it is in Danish. Mostly, I don't speak Danish very well, so my Danish pronunciation is a little off. Anyway, when I was first doing shamanic studies through the core shamanism trainings, I learned about power animal retrieval, right? Bringing my totem in, and I'm like, I wonder if I have a tree, right? Okay, I have an animal. I wonder what my tree is. So I went into a journey time, and immediately I heard the word rowan, and I didn't know about a rowan tree at that time. I didn't know there was such a tree. I'm like, rowan, huh? So I look it up and I see the picture of a rowan tree, and it has little pretty red berries. And anyway, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so then I'm like, maybe I'll change my last name to Rowan, just like a random thought. And then I'm like, well, I wonder what my last name actually means in Danish. So I look it up, and my last name in Danish means law of the rowan tree, right? And so it was one of those moments early on in my shamanic training where I was like, I believe this stuff is real. Oh my God, how is that even possible? That I can be told there's a tree, I'd never heard of the tree, and then it turns out it's my last name. It's been with me all along. I just didn't even know it. So I believe, I believe in this work. I believe in our collective, humanity's collective ability to know, to see, to receive, to feel, to grow and heal through these kind of shamanic practices, regardless of what culture it comes from, that it's potent and it's really, really miraculous. So that's my name.
Yeah, that's quite extraordinary. Beautiful. And also your last name, how wow that you got it from the shamanic journey as well. It's really wonderful. I also thought like, yeah, we're nearly coming to the end, but I also wanted to, yeah, close this up because I know you're now in a new time, in a new phase, and you're also teaching classes as well. And I was just wondering, like, if you want to maybe share anything, like what you're maybe going to offer in the future to your students, perhaps, and yeah, your change in time as well, becoming a bit more, yeah, independent, I suppose, as a
That's
healer
right.
and a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been working, this is how we met. I was working as an interim executive director for a beautiful organization called the Fountain for the Existence, or for the natural order of our existence, the Fountain for short. And a few months ago, 3 months ago, I got this very loud message that I needed to let go of reliance on a regular paycheck and to step out on my own and to make my world of teaching, of classes, of pilgrimages my main focus, to give it 100% of me, or at least 100% of that part of me. My kids get the other 100%. So I just finished that, and now I really am stepping in. I have a couple of things that I can share about. So there's a deck of cards called the Anubis Oracle. I have them sitting right here, actually. And for the rest of the year, once a month on the first Saturday, I'm doing an Anubis Oracle Circle. So it's a fun way to work with the deck. And learn about the Neteru, because each of the cards have different of the deities on them. And so we work as a group reading the cards. And you don't have to have a deck to participate in the circle, because I have them up on the screen and can work with them that way. So that's really fun. I really enjoy it. It's a really fun 2-hour offering once a month. And then the Gifts of Ma'at that you've now heard more than many people, you've heard from the book where most people haven't yet. When I was writing that book, I was like, I think I need to try this as a class to see if it works, right? How can I offer this book to the world if it doesn't actually work? And so I developed a class before I finished the book, and I've taught the class, I think 5 times at this point, and brought about 100 people through the process, and it's potent. There's something lovely about having a book and being able to read it at your pace and having that tangible thing. But there's also something really beautiful about showing up in a class with a community that you're going through the process together. And so that's coming up at the end of the year. I'll be teaching that as well. And there's a couple other things in the works. You can always find out what's current on my website. So stay tuned.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And also for all of your wisdom that you share with us about, all of the different works that you've been doing, and giving us a first reading about your new book. That's really exciting. So really, really thank you deeply. And I hope you will come and visit us again in these live events as well. And before we close, I think I also want to mention that I want to share actually Zahra Indigo's beautiful film that is about a heart breath meditation. And so you can listen to her beautiful voice further. You don't really need to stay, but you're welcome to stay. So we will play that after we finish. So again, thank you very much, Sarah, and everybody for joining us at this event. And I just also want to say that we have another event coming up on Saturday the 25th, when we have Robert Wakely Wheeler and Wilbert Salas Atasi back, who will be giving us a ride. So you're all welcome to join us then again. So I think that's it from us, and very grateful and thankful for having you all here, and hope till soon. So let me play the film.
Breathe deeply. Envision a flame in your heart center, a flame that keeps you warm and gives you the energy to do all you do. Access your eternal love and stoke your heart flame with your love. Notice as your flame glows brighter and love fills your entire being. Feel your connection to your sacred body. Allow your awareness to sink down through the layers of this planet, through the crust, bedrock, molten magma, until you arrive into the heart of the biosphere. Feel its life force. Hear its heartbeat. From the planet's heart center, you are deeply connected to the ancestors who once breathed this same breath. Here you are directly connected to the descendants who will breathe this breath one day. Here you are intimately connected to the web of life, the walking ones, slithering ones, flying ones, swimming ones, rooted ones. Experience the wisdom and the vitality of the earth. Breathe this wisdom and vitality up through the layers, up into your heart center, where it synchronizes with your love. Allow your awareness to rise into the sky. Gazing down from above, there are no human borders, only waters, grasslands, forests, deserts, tundra. Feel your connection to your sacred planetary body. Notice the planets of this solar system all circling around the sun, their heart flame. The sun's warmth enlivens you with its luminescence. Feel your connection to your sacred solar body. Allow your awareness to move further out. Notice your solar body is a part of a galactic system with many suns, planets, and moons, all in a spiraling dance around the galaxy's heart center. Feel your connection to your sacred galactic body. Allow your awareness to travel further out. Notice your galactic body is a part of a cosmic system with countless galaxies pulsing in union with the heart center of the cosmos. Feel your connection to your sacred cosmic body. Experience the creative intelligence of the cosmos. Breathe this creative intelligence down through the layers of time and space, down into your heart center, where it synchronizes with the earth's wisdom and vitality, and with your love. You are now fully connected with earth and cosmos. Your heart flame shines brilliantly. You are light. You are creative and intelligent. You are wise and vital. You are love.